This conference will now be recorded.
Well, good morning again, everyone, and it's a lovely Sunday morning. It's Mother's Day, and I'm so happy to be able to come to you by means of internet and bring some thoughts into your homes with regard to Mother's Day. I want to begin by mentioning in the book of Proverbs, chapter 31, at verses 10 all the way down through 31, we have a great description of precious mothers. And who can find a virtuous woman? The writer of Proverbs posed the question. Her price is far above rubies. And boy, oh boy, is that ever true. And so we're so grateful to recognize mothers on this special day as being the really special people that they are. And so my brief message to you this morning is the characteristics of a great mother. In the book of Exodus, chapter 2, verse 2, I read these words. And there went a man out of the house of Levi and took to wife a daughter of Levi. And the woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw that he was a goodly child, she hid him for 3 months. Well, there's an old cliche that I've heard a lot, and I suspect you have too, that a dog is man's best friend. I have a comment to make about that. Baloney. No, a dog is not man's best friend. A man's best friend is his mother. I'm telling you the truth. Every child needs a good, godly mother. And I was thinking the other day, what a wonderful world this would be if every child had a good, godly mother. What a wonderful world it would be, and what a quite different society we would have if each child could be grateful that he had a godly mother. So today's mothers and future mothers need to look well and learn well the virtues that are mentioned in the example that we have in an Old Testament mother that we're going to look to as being the model for us today. Because, well, I'm sad to say it, but I know it's true, and you know that it's true. We've allowed commercialism and materialism to rob us of idealism and the things that we need to believe and say and do and how we should live. We live in an age of unprecedented selfishness. Everybody's out to get as much as he can while he can. And sometimes I think we are a living example of the rich man that the Bible talks about, who had no time to do anything but work and fill his barns full of goods. And when he got them full, he said, my barns are too small. I got to have bigger barns. He built bigger barns and he filled them full. And now he said, aha, at last I have done it. Now I can lay back and eat, drink, and be merry and enjoy the work of my hands. And God said, you fool, tonight you're going to die. Now whose will these things be that you've spent your life working for? What a sobering thought. Well, we need mothers who can help their children to understand and put life in a better perspective, because the pits of immorality and godliness into which our nation has presently sunk leaves a huge gap that is crying out and showing us that things haven't been going on that are correct and good. So consider with me this Jewish mother, this Hebrew woman. Her name is Jochebed. Jochebed, the mother of Moses, as a model of those virtuous women who are so desperately needed in our world today. Well, Jochebed is a kind of an unusual name, at least to English speaking people, but it literally means the Lord is glorious. Oh, well, that certainly puts a different spin on, not a spin, but a different light on that name. It causes us to rejoice. It's a beautiful name. She was of the tribe of Levi, and her husband was a tribe of Levi. And I want to point out that Jochebed had a good husband. Thank God for that. Well, every woman ought to have a good husband. That means you need to be wise and choosing well who you are going to spend your life with. Often, modern mothers sadly find their husbands to be their greatest opponent in life, not their greatest helper. So, husbands sometimes interfere with wives serving the Lord as they ought, faithfully, to raising their children in the nurture and in the admonition of the Lord. I submit to you that husbands can do a great job in helping their wives. And I know this is supposed to be about mothers, but if you can't have a good mother if you don't have a good father, I mean, I guess you can, but it'd certainly be a great deal more difficult. So God has given to the man the position of being the head of the family. Now, there's a lot of people in the world won't agree with this, but God made a man to serve him. And then he made a woman to help the man because the man needed help. And that's the way the divine order was set, and nothing has happened to change that. Down through the years of the patriarchs, it was always the head of the family who acted as the priest on behalf of that family before God. And let me tell you, a whole lot of husbands and fathers today are going to have a whole lot to answer for before God because they're not fulfilling their role as they ought. So husbands should help their wives because they can, and because they can, they ought to. Jochebed recognized parenthood as a glorious privilege and responsibility. She was willing, now you get this, she was willing to defy the orders of a king in order to preserve her child. I've noticed that a whole lot about mothers. Sometimes I see it more in grandmothers than I do in mothers. Oh boy, you don't mess with the grandchild, not when grandma's around, I'll tell you for sure. Well, how opposite is the actions that we see too much of today? A lot of modern women do not appreciate motherhood. They detest motherhood. And they engage in open, outright murder in order to prevent motherhood. And they think that if they get an abortion, that now they're not a mother. Let me tell you something. You're either the mother of a living child or a dead child. You're still a mother. What kind of mother are you is the question. So Jochebed took her life, so to speak, into her own hands. She said, no, not going to obey the edict of the king, or the Pharaoh, as they called him back then. And because of that, hers was the joy of creationism, of preservation. She rendered a service to God and to her nation in a time that was appropriate and a time that was needful, and it was a service that only a good mother could do. So Jochebed was a woman of vision, a mother of vision. She saw in Moses something extraordinary. We go back to Exodus chapter 2, verse 2. She saw that Moses was a goodly child. And then, as Stephen in his great message in Acts chapter 7 spoke of him, he used these terms, that he was an exceedingly fair child. And then in the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, that great Hall of Faith fame chapter, we read in chapter 11, verse 23, that Moses was a goodly child. And so there was certainly something extraordinary about Moses and his infancy. Hers was, that is, Jochebed's vision was a prophetic insight. And I say that because the Hebrews were well aware of the fact that God had told Abraham that his seed would sojourn in a strange country, but in the fourth generation, they would come back into the land of promise. And so she understood the possibilities of what could be here, whether she was exactly right on or not. She was well within the perimeters of what the Bible teaches. And so she understood the possibilities for her nation, for her family, for her God, and for future generations. Thank God for her insight. This baby of Jochebed's was designed for spiritual purposes, and she cooperated with God's purpose for her child. Isn't it marvelous? I think today that some mothers' worst fears might be that their sons might surrender to the ministry, or that they might be called upon to use their life in the service of God. Now, they don't want them to do that. They want them to be a rocket scientist or some kind of entrepreneur that will net them millions of dollars. And for what? For what? So Jochebed was a mother of faith. And what is faith? Believing the promises. I want to hammer down on that. A lot of people say they have faith whenever all they have is a fanciful wish. If you do not have a promise to believe in, you do not have faith. And so I have faith in the promises of God. I have faith in the promises of my brethren. When they promise something, I believe in them. I believe that they will do it. But I certainly have a more solid faith in God than I do in men. And so that great promise was there, and Jochebed was well aware that her child was a fourth generation child, and perhaps, just perhaps, this is the extraordinary child that God will use to deliver his people. Well, and Hebrews chapter 11 again, verse 23 says, by faith, Moses' parents defied the edict of Pharaoh. Moses' parents hid Moses and did not conform to what was ordered that they should do in the destruction of male children. So she would not accept defeat. Most godly mothers don't. She would do all in her power to meet the need of the day, the need of the hour, and certainly that's what most godly mothers do. See, Jochebed was more than a cook. Now, wait just a minute. There's something really good about a good cook. Yes, sirree, very valuable. And we can say how nice it is and how wonderful it is that, we have mothers who know how to cook and prepare food and other things well for their family. But Jochebed was also a teacher of the things of God to her children, to others. And so children need more than material provisions. They need to have inspiration. They need to have guidance in spiritual things. And so Jochebed taught Moses truth about God. She portrayed for him the great heroes of faith and taught him sympathy for the unfortunate. She taught him intolerance for injustice. She taught him about the God of Israel, and that was evident in his life. You say, when did she do all of these things? She just hid him for 3 months. Well, that's true, but you know the story, don't you? Yeah, she made a little ark, a little basket, fixed it where water couldn't get in it, put Moses in it, and had Miriam, his sister, to place that little ark in the bulrushes of the river and to back away and watch and see what happened. And that's when Pharaoh's daughter and some of her maids came down to bathe at the river. And Moses began to cry in the little ark, and she heard it, and she said, "Look!" And so they pulled that ark out of the water, and they said, "Look, it's a little Hebrew boy." And Pharaoh's daughter was childless, and she wanted a son, and so she said, "That's going to be my son." Well, Miriam, she, she ran up and said, "Oh," said, "you have a little Hebrew baby. Would you like for me to find you a Hebrew woman who could nurse him for you and be a caretaker for a little while?" And she said, "Oh, yes." Well, what did Miriam do? Of course, she went and got her mother, Moses' mother. And Moses Moses' mother had the wonderful opportunity, even though she knew she was going to have to give this child up, she had the opportunity to nurse him, to teach him. And in the custom of those days, weaning away usually came at about age 5. And they usually had a party at the weaning of a child. And so many psychologists will tell you today what you implant in the mind and heart of a child in the first 5 years of their life is going to stay with them forever. And certainly Jochebed did much for Moses in those days. Well, responsibility was Jochebed's. Vision was Jochebed's. Faith was Jochebed's. Courage was Jochebed's. Sacrifice was Jochebed's. A teacher was Jochebed's. Was it easy? No. Can you imagine loving your sweet little child day and night and day and night and busily teaching him things he needs to know, knowing full well that at about age 5, you're right to give him up? Heartache, tears, but doing what was right. What was right. And God blessed it so mightily. I submit to you that the characteristics of Jochebed are the characteristics of not just a good mother, but of a great mother. And how we long to see many like her in our world today. Because those characteristics infused in modern mothers make them to be great mothers just as she was. So no one can give your child those important things that they need, not only just knowledge, but in their psychic and the psychology of life, the love that only a mother can give. Nobody can give that but you, just you. And so my prayer, my plea is that God will help all of our little girls, all of our young ladies, all of our mothers to be that kind of mother in life. Whether you are fortunate enough to have children or whether you do not have children, you know, she that is barren hath many more children than she that hath a husband. That's what God said whenever people invest their life into the lives of others, sharing Jesus and the proponents of faith that will make them to be what God wants them to be. Husbands ought to help their wives, absolutely, to be that kind of woman, that kind of mother to their children. So, commitment to Christ is where it begins, folks. Yep, come right back down to that. Always that. Everything hinges on personal relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ, everything. And so God will live in your heart. And that's the good news today. God will live in your heart. God will live in your home if you will invite him to do so. If you'll open your heart in all sincerity and give place to God. I say to you more than that, he'll bless your children through you. But I'm not done yet. He will bless you through your children. Oh, how marvelous it is whenever we have had the opportunity to instill what we are, what makes us tick, our beliefs in God, in our children, and then we get older and our children have children and they honor the teachings that we have given to them. What a blessing. What a blessing. And that is in the offering for every mother today. Thank you, Jochebed, for the example that you gave to us. And God help us all to realize the value of the things that we look back over these thousands of years to see what you did. And even though it often caused heartache and pain, you knew it was right. And you did that which was right. God help us all to be a people who do that which is right. May God bless you with these thoughts throughout the course of this special day.